Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Matt McCarthy. I'm our Chief Client Officer here at Sourcepass. It's great to have you here today. Appreciate you spending the time with myself and Ryan. For just a bit of background, for those that don't know me, I have the opportunity here at Sourcepass to lead our client experience and strategic relationships throughout the entire client lifecycle, from our marketing to our sales organization and our client strategy team. I have about 15 years experience or so, a little bit more than that, in leading client success teams throughout various technologies, and really passionate about working with clients to understand their goals and challenges and how we can help accomplish them. And so with that, I love to simplify complex challenges. I always find it interesting, kind of the more complex challenge or goal that there is, to oversimplify in many ways. It could be good or bad. And a bit about myself personally. I have 4 young kids, so I spend most of my time, understandably, there with my kids and my wife. But on the side, when I do get some free time, I love to get into a good DIY project. Also, another thing that I oversimplify sometimes. My wife has a nickname for me with that, but we'll save that for another time. But Ryan, let me hand it to you to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Matt. I'm Ryan Vilar. Hello, everyone. I'm a vCIO here at Sourcepass. Been with Sourcepass for approximately 5 years, but have 22 years of experience in the IT field, starting initially as a sysadmin and running a Windows NT farm for a professional sports organization in the New York area. I've been in the MSP field for approximately 8 years. I really enjoy the visibility into many different client environments and getting to understand the different kinds of businesses and what people do and how people make profit, right, for themselves and shareholders, et cetera. My approach to IT is that of really looking at the people connection, building trust, having a genuine curiosity in how a business operates and functions, and using data, right, to provide strategic IT guidance. On a personal level, I'm a first-time dad. I have an 8-month-old infant son, so I very much enjoy the outdoors, camping, hiking, kayaking if I can, and nowadays more so neighborhood walks with my family.
That's great. Awesome, Ryan. Well, thanks again for joining us. Just a few housekeeping items before we get into the main topic here. For those that are not aware, we have 2 ongoing webinar series. We have our digital transformation series, as well as our learning series. In our learning series, we have our upcoming Quest webinar, which is Sourcepass Platform Quest, with our roadmap and new feature releases that's coming out on August 13th. And both our digital transformation series and our learning series are all with the intention to ensure that our clients are maximizing the value of the technology that you invest in. So we go deep into training and tips and so forth of various tools and applications, both from Microsoft Suite as well as the Sourcepass tools. And so again, it's all about investing in your technology. As you make big investments, you got to make sure you maximize the use and the value of your technology. Last item here is, if you have any questions, please, I encourage any questions or topics that you'd like to cover. There's the Q&A feature within Teams, so you just throw a question in there, and Ryan and I will be making sure that we save some time towards the end. And then there will be a follow-up survey after the session. We love your feedback here on how can we make your time most valuable, what topics would you like us to cover through the digital transformation and the learning series. So with that said, we're here today to talk about proper technology planning. And I want to start with, again, me oversimplifying something. The big world of managed IT and security, we do a lot here at Sourcepass. But we boil this down into our focus of our approach with excellent service, strategic guidance delivered with innovation to our clients. That's our overall approach that we live by and operate by day in and day out. And today's topic is really all on that strategic guidance layered in with some innovation components about proper technology planning and what does it mean to have a proper technology plan. What are the benefits? What are the challenges if you don't have a technology plan? It also can be very overwhelming to start with a technology plan. There's so many different components. Where do you start? So I'm going to oversimplify it. I'm going to take a little bit more of a philosophical approach at first on technology planning. And then we'll get into a little bit more detail and sound out how Ryan really approaches this. So with this, the first thing I want to do is ground ourselves in the employees today in today's world. I love this challenge or argument that dispute, debate that I get into with many all the time. But you can't argue today that there is any employee at any organization, any size, any vertical, any industry, any company that is not completely dependent on technology to be successful. There's, of course, your very direct and known examples where you have an in-office employee and he or she is working at their computer day in and day out. Of course, they're relying on technology. But oftentimes, people throw different examples at me of folks that don't rely on technology. And one that was brought to me recently was somebody who's a chef or a cook. They're not relying on technology in any way. If you think about it, the point of sale system, in order to take orders and to fund everything you're doing to make meals, is pretty critical to that employee's ability to be successful. Inventory management, ensuring that you have the right ingredients and inventory to ensure that you're successful in making what you're making. And then you can even take it a little bit more indirect around, think about the vendors that they rely on and ensuring that deliveries are on time and ensuring that they're there with the right the right ingredients, the right inventory, and that they're on time. If you impact any of those between the chef or cook to the employees sitting at their desk in an office, you impact their ability to have successful technology. You're impacting their ability for them to be successful in their role. So I would say confidently, you can't find any employee that isn't dependent on technology to be successful in their role. And success is the key word there, because employees have such an increasing expectation, need, and understandable demand for technology. So I want to talk about that a little bit and what the landscape looks like from an employee perspective today. And this is really, really key about technology planning. Employees not only want, but they need, I call it rare. It's rare that you find an employee that is getting technology to support all of these components. Reliability, accessibility, revolutionary, and easy. So reliability sounds pretty self-explanatory, but really think about it. It's when you're relying on whether it's your device to work or whether you have something urgent, you're relying on your technology, or whether you're relying on that order to come in as a chef and that doesn't happen, or your point of sale system breaks. That really, really impacts their ability to be successful. Employees have to be able to rely on their technology day in and day out. Accessibility. On the surface, it may seem, naturally you go to, can somebody log into their computer and, their computer turns on, it's accessible, check the box. It's much, much, much deeper than that. When I think about accessibility, there's the basics of, what I just covered there, but think about access to the right tools and technology to be successful in what they're doing. And then access to the right information is key. If you don't have access to the right information in real time to be able to support a customer, you're impacting your employees' ability to be successful. The flip side of that is you have to ensure that the right people have the right access to the right technology, right data, information, and insights. We've also got to make sure that they don't have access to information that they shouldn't. Accessibility is key. Revolutionary. Innovation is absolutely paramount in planning your technology for your employees to be successful. I know we hear this all the time, we think about it, but to ground us in it, there's a fact that was released recently that over 30% of US adults are using some form of AI on a weekly basis for personal use. That's 30% of US adults using AI for personal use. If US adults are using AI on a personal basis, myself included, it's helped me quite a bit on my DIY projects. Why would the expectation be any different at work, where arguably you're doing things that are much more challenging? So if you're in, when you compare the two, there's so much access, easy access to technology as a consumer. Employees expect the same thing when they're at work. The irony of it, though, is that everyone wants the latest and greatest technology, but no one really wants to go through change. And so you have to make it easy for your users. Easy in the sense of that reliability component and the access to information and the roles that they're completing day in and day out, it's got to be as smooth as possible, and technology needs to be enabling them. But also easy in the sense that employees need to they need to have an understanding of planning and predictability as it relates to change. There's always the cost of change and the cost of no change, right? You have to make change to innovate your technology, but predictability around when that change is going to come, what to expect, and why to expect it, why we're doing this change, not only will help your employees in understanding it, but most importantly, will help your employees adopt and really accept the technology changes that you're putting into place. So again, when you think about employees, think about in technology planning, think about RARE: reliability, accessibility, revolutionary, and easy. Okay, tie this together. Going back to my point on, you can't argue with me that every employee is dependent on technology to be successful. So if they're dependent on technology to be successful, if either your technology is not up to the standards of what the employees need in today's world, or if the technology is challenged and has issues, you're impacting their ability to be successful. If you're impacting your employees' ability to be successful, you're impacting their employee satisfaction. And employee satisfaction is absolutely key in today's world. There's so many components of this that tie back to long-term success for employees, that looking at employee satisfaction and employee engagement. But bring that back to technology. So if you're impacting their technology, you're impacting their employee satisfaction. If you're impacting their employee satisfaction, you're impacting your customer satisfaction because you're not delivering the best service to your customers. And ultimately, it impacts the success of the organization. So technology is at the center of employees in being successful, and employees are at the center of your organization in being successful. And that's how it ties together. All right. One more component on the philosophical approach here. Now let's transition to company. So we talked about employees and why it's so important to think about your employees and your technology planning. And now let's think about from the company lens. This here is maps. So RARE maps. You've got to map this out for your technology plan. It goes without saying, number one is security. Not having an effective security posture in place today and/or security policies about what to do when a security incident does occur. It's inevitable. Security will come up and will rise at some point in time. You can't say that you're always going to be able to prevent any type of security incident. That's key, obviously, in mitigating any risk. But there's so much behind on preparation for if in the event there is a security incident. And the impact to a company or an organization's success and reputation is absolutely critical, not to mention all the financial implications, for any type of security incident. The second big piece is aligning with your business goals. And I'll talk about this in a minute, but there's so many different goals and initiatives that companies have. You've really got to narrow that down to what are you accomplishing? And technology is always going to be behind that to not only support, but more importantly, enable and drive your business goals. Predictability. It's arguably one of my favorite topics on this is predictability. Predictability in the sense of employee experience that I talked about before, of when something's going to change, why it's going to change, and so forth. But think about the planning for your technology initiatives, projects that you're working on. You have to plan for when is the change going to happen at the company level as well, and tying that back into your business goals. So if you have downtime, say during the summer months, if business is a little bit slower and there's more of a tolerance for change, you need to plan that out effectively. There needs to be predictability there. So there's predictability from the operations and the execution side, but then think about from the financial side. No one likes to make the big investments in technology that we all have to today, but it's absolutely critical. It's a necessity. Planning for the investments that you make, both from an OpEx and a CapEx perspective, is absolutely key in order for you to have a successful technology plan. The inverse of that, when you don't have proper planning or predictability from the financial side, is when something arises. And let's say there's an issue that occurs and you have to make a large capital investment that wasn't planned. The implications that has to the business, the distraction it causes initially, But then oftentimes as a budget is set, on an annual cycle, the money needs to come from somewhere to make the investment that now is a necessity in short order. And that can impact other organizations depending on how you're figuring out that CapEx. So predictability is absolutely paramount here. And then last, almost goes without saying, sustained operations or continuity, right? Business continuity in many different ways, from day to day, ensuring that all operations are running as smoothly as possible, both from your internal and your production environments, as well as being prepared for, things like natural disasters or things, unforeseen circumstances, and having that business continuity throughout. So that's from a company perspective of really what to plan for. So employees, it's rare that you're meeting all the needs of the technology they depend on and expect for today. And then from a company perspective, you got to map it out on a more macro level. Staying on the company theme. Any company or organization have any initiatives? Anyone can relate to this? There's initiatives all over the place. There's initiatives that folks plan for. There's initiatives that pop up, from day to day, week to week, month to month, constant initiatives. And it's across the span, right? And it's good because everyone's innovating and really driving the organization forward. Everything from focusing on diversification of revenue and taking more of an innovative strategic approach to the company, to market expansion in different offices, to focusing on your employee engagement, employee satisfaction, to implementing AI, right? And then how does that tie into compliance? Or is compliance leading the initiative? And that's a component. These goals and initiatives are all over the place across all different organizations, and I think everyone can relate to that. Sometimes it can be a bit overwhelming. My favorite saying is a goal without a plan is just a wish. You've got to tie this together. You've got to think about what your priorities are within those initiatives and truly come up with a plan. And that's what we want to cover here is proper technology planning. As I mentioned before, technology is at the center of this. Technology is at the center of your employees being successful, your employees' ability to be successful. Technology is at the center of your company being successful. So if you don't have a technology plan, you're going to challenge yourself in being successful. So IT is at the center of this. So Ryan, as I took the philosophical approach there, ground us in reality here as we get into executing technology plan. Would you agree? What do you think?
I do. What I'm going to talk about is really going to mirror much of what you stated here. But when we think about technology planning, I think about first most is what is the risk footprint of the business, right? And on top of that is what is the security footprint of the business. And sometimes those things don't necessarily have to align with large security programs, for example. They could be things like even, do I have workstations with current operating systems that are getting patched on a monthly basis? Do we have a current antivirus in place and a program to manage those, or the antivirus, for example, that's updated on a daily basis? Do I have core infrastructure that's old, that's aging, right? And that doesn't have necessarily a quick means to resolving uptime if there's a failure? Do I have redundant ISPs to my main offices? So those things fall into risk, right? And you want to mitigate that as best as possible. So when we talk about how we think about building a roadmap, it always starts with risk. What is the risk to your business? And what is your exposure to more of a broader outage should something happen, whether it's in your control or not? From there, we think about security. So beyond the things like firewalls and such that provide perimeter security to your network, for example, we think about as it relates to end users and how they access your business systems and your applications. Are we doing things like rotating passwords on a recurring basis? Do we have MFA in place for core business systems, for disparate business systems? So let's say we have an Office 365 or M365 tenant, and then I have a core ERP solution. I use Sage in my business. Can we tie management or access into single sign-on via Entra, right? So that from an ongoing perspective of managing the environment, it also is easier, or you're taking less steps to onboard users, offboard users, etc. I also tend, once you get past kind of those initial foundation, you look to almost some of your low-hanging fruit before you get to your bigger picture stuff, right? So I reference again disparate systems that employees access to do their work, for example. How can we integrate those into a single environment? Are we utilizing a legacy on-premise application that has a easy enough migration to cloud where we can reduce your dependency on on-prem server infrastructure, for example? Can we shift our budgeting model from a CapEx model to more of an OpEx model and then just standardize costs, et cetera? But broadly, that's how I look at an approach to a strategic assessment.
Got it. Okay. Understood. There's a lot there for a good reason. And you know me, I'm going to oversimplify it. When I think about this, Ryan, and companies, like put myself in the seat, I have all sorts of initiatives and new things I want to do, new things I want to roll out, new initiatives, to drive the organization, to drive a better client experience. I've constantly all these initiatives, and largely they're dependent on technology, right? So when I think about the shiny objects, if you will, or the initiatives that are more of the enablement and driving the business forward. From what you just covered there on the priority being risk, I think of this in the longer term technology plan. If you've got to get your foundation solid of ensuring that you're mitigating risk and ensuring that you have a plan for ongoing mitigation of risk for your business. And kind of checking the boxes one after one, right? So between overall risk to the business, to security, compliance, continuity, and if you have an ongoing plan there where you know that foundation is solid across your technology, your infrastructure, then you can start to layer on more of the innovation initiatives. Is that fair to say?
Very fair to say, right? And it also aligns with budgeting for all of this stuff, right? So we very much, when you take a proactive approach to how you're going to budget, how you're going to action these initiatives, you're going to spend less, and you're going to have, when you have a predictable, even cost model for all these initiatives, you're going to have less stressful teams implementing these things, right? Because again, you're looking at it proactively versus being reactive. I'm planning for the next 18 months versus something expensive or critical is broken, and now I need to really spin cycles and people to fix it and get myself back to a baseline that's still not where I want to be.
Mm-hmm. I think about all these items that you covered kind of on the macro level, right? Between, something risk and then security and so forth. They seem very much on the, what I'll call the company level, as I was just covering. But as I'm thinking through this, they're so intertwined and interconnected to the employee, right? Regarding, of course, reliability, accessibility, all the things we mentioned, but having that foundational technology in place for things like employee onboarding, right? You brought that up. I read a stat recently on employee onboarding that employees that report that they have a successful onboarding have a 70% chance or likelihood that they're with the organization for greater than 3 years. There's a huge impact to employee tenure. There's also a correlation to employee commitment to the organization and loyalty. I read that they have employees who have a great onboarding experience have an 18 times more commitment or loyalty to an organization because that experience starts out right from the beginning. But I think of that as also empowering employees to be successful. And I know it's broader than technology. There's a lot on the training components of it within the specific role, but again, technology is at the center of it. And so if you can ramp somebody up and they have a very smooth, great experience right out of the gates, and then their ability to be successful faster in their role, it makes sense, right? But how that relates back to where I was going is you got to have these foundational pieces of technology in place for things like automating your employee onboarding and offboarding, right?
Right. And to add to that point, Matt, the challenge in onboarding staff is finding the balance between ease of use and security. You can make things very secure and very difficult for your employees to access, again, basic systems that they need to access to do their work. So, you think of things like mobile application management policies for mobile devices that are personally owned, for example, where you can containerize your organizational data on someone's mobile device. They can access it, but if an employee is to leave, right, that data is pulled without impacting their personal device, as an example. Or we think about things like conditional access that allows you, or it's really where you enforce that, okay, I'm going to mandate that only a company provided device can access our data. You can't use personal devices, for example, right? So there are things you do there, to ensure that you have a layer of security to how your employees access your business resources, but also that, with some balance, you're enabling them, right, to be effective and function and, kind of hit the ground running when they join your organization. In the area of just single sign-on, for example, or integrating business systems into your domain environment, that's where now with all these, most core, business enterprise applications have an integration with an M365 environment, Entra environment, for example. So this is where, again, you look to, I onboard a staff, I create their user account, for example, I put them into a security group, and then they have access to my ERP platform or my design platform, et cetera.
Yep, got it. All makes sense, but I'll tell you, I'm overwhelmed. My head's spinning a little bit. We just covered so much ground here. And I think about, where do we start, right? If you don't have a technology plan in place today, and hopefully you're understanding the need or importance for your organization to have a true proper technology plan, where do we start? And the way I look at it is, number one, you have to assess where you are. You have to look in the mirror and understand your current baseline, from your technology infrastructure to your employee experience, all things in between. Security, obviously a big component here. You've got to understand where you are for that initial baseline. And then second is, you really have to be disciplined around the future state and the objectives of what you're looking to accomplish and by when, right? You need to be realistic. You can accomplish a lot in a short period of time. That can be done. It can be costly, but you need a plan for it, right? So you got to first understand, or second, understand your future state. And then within that goes into prioritization of, how to get there. It's more the approach. It's all about priorities. So those more innovative pieces that I like to, introduce to our technology roadmap sometimes don't fit within the prioritization, because you've got to, take steps in order to get there. And then, timing is a critical component of your plan, right? When I talk about priorities, timing, think about business impact and strategy, and then moving forward to execute, right? And there's constantly the execution and measuring to ensure you're on track with your technology plan, that predictability. But there will be other initiatives that will pop up, just like my slide had initiatives all over the place. You'll have to iterate sometimes. You'll have to evolve, as things do come up. So with that, for anyone who is not working with Sourcepass today and doesn't have a technology roadmap and feels that same, feeling of being overwhelmed, we have what we call a scorecard. And this really empowers our clients, or if we're not engaged today, our future clients, to get that initial baseline. And that's where we're here to help. We're here to help you really understand and assess your current environment. And our scorecard is a very fundamental overview of your IT operations, as well as your cybersecurity. And to your point, Ryan, what this will call out is mainly risk, right? Where are the risks and gaps today in that foundation? And that's the first step in assessing or understanding your environment. So as we produce that collectively and understanding your goals, as well as your current environment, we can, give a quick view on where your gaps are within your current environment, as well as the gaps in order to achieve your goals. But I know, Ryan, you're doing consulting for our existing clients and building technology roadmaps and plans. So for our existing clients, it's obviously much different, because we're managing, all of the client's environment or most of the client's environment, depending on our engagement. So not taking that from a surface level and giving that initial assessment, we have much more detail that we can provide here and work together with our clients. How do you start there?
So it starts with, if it's a client with a fairly new relationship, it goes back to understanding their business. What is your business? What's your deliverable to your customers? How do you bring in revenue? And what are the tools that you need to deliver such? Once you're there, you think about, move forward strategy to ensure that you have scalability of your infrastructure, your time of that infrastructure, and that your staff is able to perform effectively. When we think about long-term planning, right, you think about things also like, to speak to predictability, it's also what is coming down the horizon that I need to be keen of or aware of. Things that aren't necessarily under my control. So we use a big one, this is Windows 10 end of life, for example, right? That is um, a that is something that's happening that is outside of the control of all business owners, where Microsoft is mandating this operating system's end of life, and you have to upgrade or replace your machines by October of this year, right? So in our planning, even in the prior year, we've been outlining to our client bases, okay, you have a fleet of 100 machines, for example, and 30% of those will not support Windows 11. So let's plan to replace those. And then here's a pro services initiative. Here's what's going to take in resource hours to upgrade the rest. And so our clients can go into the year knowing, okay, I need to allocate this spend for Windows 10 end of life. This is something that, again, is an uh, external factor that is not under the business control. I can't control it. It's just there. It's happening. We want to build our roadmaps in more of a 3-year look forward. So we look at, again, the kind of up and down the road initiatives of, okay, infrastructure is aging out at this time frame. I'm going to plan for this firewalls in 25 and switches in 26 and wireless in 27, for example. But more broadly, okay, my next server OS end of life is Windows 2016 in January 27. So looking at lead time, got to plan for that in 2026, for example. 2, more of your kind of structural changes against your infrastructure footprint. I run an on-premise Microsoft Exchange. I run email on-prem. I have for years. And Microsoft has changed that model moving forward to a subscription model, right? So I can't use my licensing that I purchased 5, 6, 7 years ago. I've got a plan for that now in an upgrade. Does it make sense to move to cloud, right? Do I need to have the liability of maintaining an on-prem server footprint? Can I move that to M365 email, for example? So we like to, again, look at those factors that, A, we can't control, those that we can't control, but we want to build those out over a 3-year footprint. So we understand what are the big initiatives that will occur in these next 36 months. Not that there aren't some up and down the road things or kind of one-offs to happen, but broadly what's happening. My lease is up next, end of next year. I'm going to move my office. What does that look like for me? So that's kind of our approach. It is being predictable, but it's also looking kind of out into the long term. So there are no large surprises when we're coming to our budget planning or our technology planning.
Right. I'm with you. And I've seen you do it, time and time again. The way that you put together the plan, I personally love it because it simplifies, all of the complex world of IT and security and all the things, to help a client achieve their goals. But it's such a collaborative exercise. And this is really to enable our clients to be successful. And the way I think of it, to your point, is there are items that are outside of everyone's control, right? Microsoft going end of life, that's an expenditure for most if they're not, managing proper hardware life cycle, and we can't update the devices, you're going to need to purchase new devices. It goes back into planning and predictability, from a budgeting standpoint, knowing that that's coming up October 14th and incorporating that into your plan. But also your employees, I go back to that again, is, understanding that your device needs to be updated or replaced in order, for us to achieve this. That's the nature of the beast and just how fast technology moves. And we're always going to need to do that. The other component that I see in this, which I love and I've seen you do, is it's really around some of the others that are not absolute requirements. It's that collaborative exercise to understand what your goals are, what you need to accomplish. And it's really providing the information and guidance for clients to make informed decisions. Because we talked about a lot of investments here, right? A lot of ongoing investments, and that is the nature of technology. You need to be constantly investing in your technology to be successful. But it's to a client's business, to make that decision and really to make an informed decision with the guidance that you've provided around, if you don't do something, what are the implications? And obviously there's things that we need to hold firm on to make sure that our clients are protected, like Windows 11, which is key.
Right. It also starts with a question that we ask kind of towards the start of the year to all of our clients. What are your goals for this year? What do you hope to accomplish with the business this year? And so that'll help us to reprioritize what we may suggest based on what your plan is with your business, or to provide guidance on, hey, we have to do these things because you want to do X. Your business infrastructure is not scalable to this growth target for this year in current state. So let's get you there.
Yeah. And if you have a goal without a plan, it's just a wish, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
So Ryan, I want to pull up, got an example of, I know there's so much more behind this, but I love it because of simplification. When we think about, technology planning, as we're going through the exercise, we really come up with a technology plan. Walk us through some of the high level, how do you manage and monitor the progress of the technology plan?
Sure. So, we think about the actual meeting where we're talking about the technology plan. We're talking about a snapshot in time, and a snapshot that is part of a discussion looking forward. We also want to be approachable, right? Where we're talking to business owners and decision makers who aren't necessarily technical, nor should they be, right? So we want to your point, Matt, provide guidance that makes sense, right, for those who are making decisions. In a meeting deck for an assessment, we will provide something along the lines of what's here, which is more a look ahead of the year ahead. So here's what we want to potentially target over the course of the coming year. So we may provide this for 2026 in the technology plan, for example. And we want to align those initiatives to quarters. And some of these things are, again, up and down the road things, right? You have a renewal of your NCE licensing that's on an annual date. So we know that's coming in March, for example. You have a renewal for firewalls that's coming in October, for example. So we'll align those to a specific date or a quarter. But also looking ahead at lead time even to perform some larger initiatives. So we look at Windows 11, it's here as a Q2 initiative. It's there because, okay, you have a sizable fleet of systems to be upgraded. We need resource hours. We need to schedule time with end users to upgrade their systems. We can't start this in Q3. We're not going to complete this. It's not possible right ahead of the end of life date. So we align these, again, initiatives based on priority, based on need to do versus nice to haves versus, okay, AI planning and goals is something that's important, but that's not necessarily a must have, right? And there's a lot that goes into it, from data governance to reviewing your data footprint, access, et cetera. But in light of all these other things that we have to do this year, maybe we do this Q1 of 26, so we push it out. But again, it goes back to in the deliverable or the meeting itself, when we're meeting with our clients to talk about their technology plan, we'll do a look ahead of the year, just to ensure that we're keeping ourselves, each other accountable to a timeline to complete these initiatives.
Yep. Yep. I love it. Love the structure of it. And I go back to predictability. You know what's coming. And if things change, things evolve, that's perfectly fine. As long as we collectively are aligned on the goals. And if we're making changes to those goals, we can adjust the roadmap accordingly. It's all about what's best for the business and just providing the right information and guidance to get there.
Right. And sometimes it also turns to, listen, this has been a rough year. I don't have the capital to do all these things. So speaking to being flexible and adjusting plans as things are needed, it's okay. Cool. That's great. That's okay. Then, okay, we have to do X. We have to do this one thing this year. And then we'll adjust our roadmap for the coming years and quarters.
Agreed. I also think about oftentimes the person, who's responsible for IT and our relationship, our partnership on the client's end, is the one predominantly, driving this and sharing those goals and initiatives. But what I love to see is when we get collaboration across the leadership team, with a client to ensure that everyone is aware of the technology roadmap and that it aligns to everyone's goals of what you're trying to accomplish. And I go back to the planning and predictability, right? I would guess that many folks, various leaders not related to IT are not aware of Windows 11, October 14th until that, closer to when that time comes. But with a proper technology plan that's socialized across the team, there's alignment. And I think about that alignment from the ease and the comfort and understanding of what's coming when. But I go back to adoption. These investments are inevitable. They're, necessities. You have to make these investments. When you're making major investments in your technology, if folks are resistant to that, don't understand the why, and are not willing to leverage that, now it goes back to the employee who wants revolutionary stuff but no change. But if you have a plan and you can lay that out, it's like my kids. If I set expectations with them on what's going to happen today, it's a much better day than if we don't.
Absolutely. And that goes back to the relationship too, right? It's getting that key stakeholder buy-in, and being looked at as your trusted IT partner.
Yeah.
We're not here to dictate what you have to do or should be doing. We're here to provide guidance, right? Expertise, but again, in a collaborative way with your business.
Yeah. And, thinking about how we leverage some of our own technology, what I'd love to see is in how we're delivering assessments to clients. I call it the A to B to C, where A to B is the current environment. Obviously, as we're managing that, have access to all the information between hardware lifecycle and purchase dates and renewals of software and all the various components aggregated together for the overall technology solution. That's where you are able to provide that readout of the current environment and take the lifting off of our clients. So then we, together with our clients, can spend that time focusing more on informed decision making, tied into goals, and then locking in the plan going forward, right?
Absolutely, 100%.
Excellent. Well, when we just recap all of this, if there are any questions, I don't think we have any questions in the poll just yet. Feel free to throw in any questions. Recapping, going back to the more philosophical approach. When you think about technology planning, think about your employees, and it's rare, but you want to accomplish rare of reliability, accessibility, revolutionary, and easy. And then you got to map it out as a company, mitigate your risk, align with the business goals, predictability, sustained operations. And then I'm going to say again, oversimplify. Well, where do you start with all of that? You got to get your baseline first. You got to define what you want to accomplish. Got to make priorities. You got to execute and iterate along the way. Ryan, anything to
add? Only to add is, right, I say often, you have to lay the foundation before you do the fun stuff, right? So it's all about foundationally I think we've spoken to this much here. What is the risk of the business currently in your current footprint? How can we mitigate such? And then once there, how can we scale your infrastructure to align with your business goals?
Excellent. Completely agree. Well, look, Ryan, thanks for joining today. And thank you for all who attended today. Again, you'll have a follow-up survey that will come out. I really appreciate your feedback. I'd love to hear from you on anything related to today's topic, how we can help you, either if you're not engaged with Sourcepass today and need that baseline assessment. If you're not explicitly clear, if you're working with Sourcepass today and you're not explicitly clear or want to revisit your technology roadmap, please don't hesitate to reach out. And also, please provide feedback on any future content discussion topics you'd like to go deeper. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.